They call these failures. That is the lie. These were not bad shows. They were stories cut off before they could prove what they were becoming, buried by bad timing, careless scheduling, and decisions made too early. 12 sci-fi series that did not lose their audience. They lost their chance, and once you see what they almost became, you will not forget them. Number 12, Invasion, 2005, 2006. Something was wrong in that town and nobody could prove it. That is the entire tension of Invasion, and it is exactly why it worked. No explosions, no dramatic alien reveal, just a quiet, creeping dread that something beneath the surface had already changed. Set in a Florida town rebuilding after a hurricane, the story unfolds like a psychological fracture instead of a sci-fi spectacle. People return from the storm, but they are not quite the same. Not enough to accuse, just enough to unsettle. The brilliance here is restraint. Most shows rush to explain the threat. Invasion refuses. It lets suspicion grow inside relationships. A husband looks at his wife and feels distance he cannot explain. A father starts noticing patterns that do not make sense. The horror is not what you see, it is what you start to doubt. William Fichtner anchors the show with a performance that never reveals too much. You are constantly asking if he is protector or participant. That ambiguity becomes the engine of the series. Every conversation feels loaded, every silence feels intentional. And then just when the story expands beyond the town, when the larger truth finally starts to surface, the network pulls the plug. No resolution, no payoff, just a slow burn that never got to ignite. Today, this exact style dominates streaming. Slow tension, character-driven mystery. Audiences now crave what this show was already doing 20 years ago. Invasion was not ahead of its time. It was abandoned by it. Number 11. Now and Again, 1999, 2000. Imagine waking up perfect and realizing you just lost everything that mattered. That is the cruel premise at the heart of Now and Again. A man dies in an accident. His brain is preserved. His body is replaced with something stronger, faster, engineered. A government project turns him into a living weapon. But inside that perfect body is still a husband, still a father, still a man who just wants his old life back. And here is where the show separates itself from everything else. It is not about missions. It is not about action. It is about absence. Every assignment he completes comes with the same quiet cost. He cannot go home. He cannot sit at his own table. He cannot tell his wife that he is still alive. The show does not turn that into melodrama. It lets it sit. It lets it hurt. The emotional architecture is precise. His handler treats him like an asset. His family mourns him as dead, and he exists in between those two realities, unable to belong to either. That tension never breaks. It only deepens. CBS canceled it at the exact moment it mattered most. The truth was about to come out. The story was about to shift. Instead, it ends mid-breath. What makes this sting even more is how modern it feels now. Identity, control, the cost of progress. These are not background themes anymore. They are front-page conversations. If this show released today, it would not just survive. It would dominate. Now and Again did not fail. It was cut off before it could prove how powerful it really was. Number 10. Dark Angel, 2000-2002. Before surveillance became reality, this show was already warning you. Dark Angel drops you into a broken America after an electromagnetic pulse wipes out the economy. Society fractures, power shifts, control tightens, and in the middle of it stands a genetically engineered soldier who refuses to be owned. Jessica Alba's Max is not saving the world. She is trying to survive it, paying rent, finding food, avoiding capture. That grounded struggle gives the series weight most sci-fi never achieves. This is not about heroism. This is about existence under pressure. The world building is sharp and unsettling. Restricted zones, corporate control, invisible systems deciding who gets to live comfortably and who gets left behind. It feels less like fiction and more like a warning that arrived too early for people to fully understand. Season 1 works because it trusts the audience. It builds arcs. It builds stakes. Then the network interference begins. Budget cuts hit. Creative direction shifts. Episodic stories replace long-term storytelling. The momentum collapses slowly and then all at once. By the time the show is canceled, it is already setting up something bigger, a larger rebellion, a deeper truth about the system. None of it gets paid off. Look at the world now. Genetic engineering is real. Surveillance is normalized. Power structures look familiar in uncomfortable ways. Dark Angel did not miss its moment. The audience did. Number 9. Farscape, 1999-2003. What if aliens actually felt alien for once? That is the risk Farscape took, and it is exactly why it still stands apart. Instead of safe designs and predictable characters, it built a universe that felt unpredictable and alive. Not polished, not familiar, uncomfortable in the best way. The story begins with a man lost in space, but that is just the surface. John Crichton is not a traditional hero. He breaks down, he adapts, he changes in ways that feel real. The longer he stays away from Earth, the less he belongs anywhere. And then there are the creatures, not digital shortcuts, physical performances built through puppetry and craft, the kind of work that forces actors to react to something tangible. That authenticity changes everything. You believe the world because it exists in front of you. But the real strength is psychological. The villain Scorpius is not loud or theatrical. He is controlled, patient, intelligent. The relationship between him and Crichton becomes a battle of minds rather than weapons. 4 seasons build towards something massive. The story expands, the stakes rise, the audience commits. Then the cancellation hits without warning. A cliffhanger, no resolution, years of buildup left hanging in silence. A miniseries eventually arrives to close the story, but you can feel the compression. The full vision was never allowed to breathe. In a landscape full of safe sci-fi, Farscape still feels dangerous. That is exactly why it deserves to exist again. Number 8. Firefly, 2002. This show did not fail. It was sabotaged. That is not exaggeration. That is documented reality. Firefly arrived with a clear vision, a space western about survival on the edges of a controlled universe. A crew of outsiders scraping by while a powerful government tightens its grip across the stars. And then the network stepped in and broke it. Episodes aired out of order. Character arcs were scrambled. The emotional buildup was destroyed before it even had a chance to land. Viewers were thrown into a story that no longer made sense. Not because it was confusing, because it was rearranged. Underneath that chaos was something rare. Captain Malcolm Reynolds is not a shining hero. He is a man who lost a war and never recovered from it. That quiet defeat shapes every decision he makes. Every job is survival. Every risk is necessary. The crew becomes the heart of the show, not instantly, not forced. It grows naturally. The chemistry clicks, and suddenly you are watching something that feels lived in rather than written. Then it is gone. Canceled before the full season even aired. A story that barely had time to begin. The backlash was immediate and loud. Fans refused to let it die. A film followed, but it was not enough. It never could be. What remains is potential. A universe that still feels unfinished. Characters that still feel like they had more to say. Firefly is not remembered because it ended. It is remembered because it never truly got the chance to begin. Number 7. Space. Above and Beyond 1995, 1996. War stories usually glorify survival. This one focused on the cost. Space. Above and Beyond strips away the fantasy of combat and replaces it with something far more uncomfortable. Exhaustion, fear, decisions that cannot be undone. Set in a future where humanity is locked in a brutal conflict with an alien species, the show follows young soldiers thrown into a war they barely understand. What makes it different is tone. There is no celebration here. Missions fail. People die. Not background characters. Not expendable names. The ones you invest in disappear without warning. That unpredictability creates tension most shows avoid. Then comes the deeper layer. Artificial humans created for war, treated as expendable, sent into battle because society does not value them enough to protect them. It is not subtle. It is deliberate. A direct commentary hidden inside a sci-fi setting. The writing refuses to reset. Trauma carries forward. Decisions echo. Characters change in ways that feel permanent. And yet, it was placed in a time slot designed to kill it. Friday night television, minimal promotion, limited support, the kind of scheduling that quietly buries ambition. After one season, it is over. No resolution, no second chapter, just a war that stops mid-sentence. Today, audiences embrace grounded military science fiction, shows that explore consequence instead of spectacle. This one was already doing it decades earlier. Space. Above and Beyond did not arrive at the wrong time. It was placed there. Number 6. Threshold, 2005. The invasion already happened. You just could not see it. That is the terrifying premise of Threshold. No ships in the sky, no explosions, just a signal, a pattern, something that rewrites human DNA the moment you are exposed to it. Quiet, invisible, spreading faster than anyone can track. The genius of the show is how controlled it feels. A small team trying to contain something they barely understand. A scientist who designed a contingency plan, never expecting it to be used. A linguist who realizes language itself might be the weapon. This is not chaos. This is escalation. Each episode builds on a simple idea. What if the threat does not announce itself? What if it hides inside people? What if the enemy looks exactly like you? The cast elevates everything. Carla Gugino carries the weight of leadership with precision. Peter Dinklage brings intensity that feels unpredictable. Brent Spiner adds a layer of unease that slowly grows. And behind it all is structure. A 3-season plan already mapped out. Discovery, spread, war. It was all there. Then the network interferes. Episodes shuffled, schedule disrupted, momentum lost, audience confused. The same pattern repeated again. The show disappears before it can even complete its first movement. Look at the concept now. Invisible infection. Identity replaced. Reality shifting without warning. That is not just relevant. That is exactly what modern audiences respond to. Threshold was not too complex. It was cut before it could prove how simple its brilliance really was. Number 5. Odyssey 2002. They watched the world end and then were told to stop it. That is not a twist. That is the starting point of Odyssey 5. A group of astronauts witness Earth destroyed in front of them. No explanation, no escape. Then something impossible happens. Their consciousness is sent back 5 years into their own bodies. Fix it. That is the mission. What follows is not a race against time. It is something heavier. Knowledge becomes a burden. Every decision carries weight because they know how it ends. Every relationship becomes complicated because they remember a future no one else has seen. Peter Weller delivers a performance built on restraint, a man forced to relive his life while carrying memories that should not exist, watching people he knows will die, pretending everything is normal while counting down to destruction. The show builds its mystery slowly, no rushed answers, no easy explanations. Each episode adds a piece: technology, conspiracy, the possibility that humanity may have caused its own extinction. And just when the pattern starts forming, just when the larger truth begins to take shape, the show ends. Canceled without resolution. No conclusion, no closure, just a story that stops while still moving forward. What makes this frustrating is how complete the foundation already was. Time loops, psychological tension, global stakes tied to personal choices. This is exactly the kind of storytelling modern platforms chase. Odyssey 5 already had it. It just never got the chance to finish. Number 4. Jeremiah 2002-2004. What happens when a generation grows up with no one to teach them how the world works? That is the question Jeremiah builds everything around. A virus wipes out every adult. Civilization collapses overnight. Years pass. The survivors are no longer children. They are leaders now, builders, destroyers. A society formed without guidance. This is not a typical post-apocalypse story. There are no elders rebuilding order, no memory of how things used to function. Laws are invented from instinct. Communities rise based on belief, not tradition. Some try to build something better. Others fall into control through force. Jeremiah moves through this world searching for answers about his past, but the real focus is the system forming around him. A large organization attempts to reconnect what remains of civilization, but its motives are not clean. Power shifts, trust fractures, nothing feels stable. The strength of the show is its honesty. People do not suddenly become wise. They make mistakes. They push too far. They repeat patterns they do not even understand. That unpredictability gives the world weight. Creative tension behind the scenes slowly undermines the series. The network pushes for action. The creator pushes for depth. The balance breaks. Then it ends. No resolution. No full exploration of the world it carefully built. Now think about it. A society raised without guidance, rules created in real time, morality shaped by survival. That idea has never been explored this deeply again. Jeremiah did not just tell a story. It asked a question no one has answered since. Number 3. Journeyman, 2007. Time travel is usually treated like an adventure. This show treats it like a problem. Journeyman follows a man who slips through time without warning. No machine, no control. One moment he is home. The next he is somewhere in the past, forced to fix something he does not yet understand. And every time he disappears, his present life breaks a little more. His wife starts doubting him. His brother begins to investigate him. His entire reality starts to feel unstable because no one else can see what is happening. The emotional cost becomes the real story. That is where the show separates itself. The past is not just a setting, it is a responsibility. Every change affects the present. Every mission pulls him further away from the life he is trying to hold together. The tension is not about success. It is about what he loses along the way. There is a quiet tone running through the series. Not dramatic, not exaggerated, just a steady sense that something is slipping out of place. Then external reality intervenes. The writer's strike disrupts production. Momentum collapses. The network loses interest. The show ends without resolution. No explanation. No final piece connecting everything. Today, time travel stories are everywhere, but very few handle consequence with this level of restraint. Journeyman understood something most shows ignore. Changing time is easy. Living with it is not. Number 2. Dark Skies, 1996, 1997. What if history was never what you were told? That is the unsettling foundation of Dark Skies. Not just an alien invasion story, but a complete rewrite of reality itself. Every major moment, every turning point, quietly influenced by something hidden beneath the surface. The show begins in the 1960s, but it was never meant to stay there. The creators mapped out an entire multi-season arc, each decade revealing a deeper layer of the conspiracy. A long-game narrative before television was ready for that kind of ambition. That is what makes this cancellation feel different. This was not a show searching for direction. It already knew exactly where it was going. The mythology was precise. The structure was planned. The end game existed. And still it was cut after one season. What remains is a fragment of something much larger, a world where trust becomes impossible because the truth itself is unstable. Government secrets, manipulated events, a reality shaped by forces no one can fully see. The tone carries weight, not flashy, not loud, just a steady pressure that builds with every episode. You start questioning everything, not just within the story but outside of it. The final episodes attempt to compress what should have been years of storytelling into moments. Even then, you can feel the scale of what was lost. Today, long-form storytelling dominates. Multi-season arcs are expected. Complex narratives are embraced. Dark Skies was already built for that future. It just never lived long enough to reach it. Number 1. The Invisible Man, 2000-2002. Power is easy to control when the person who has it cannot live without you. That is the real story inside The Invisible Man. On the surface, it looks simple. A man gains the ability to turn invisible through experimental technology. A classic concept. Familiar territory. Then the show adds the cost. The ability comes from a substance inside his body. Use it too much and he loses control of his mind. The only way to stay stable is through a counteragent controlled by the same people who gave him the power. Now it is no longer a gift. It is dependency. That dynamic drives everything. Every mission becomes a negotiation. Every decision carries risk, not just physical danger, but psychological collapse. The tension never leaves because the control is constant. What makes the show work is balance. It is sharp when it needs to be serious. It is surprisingly light when it needs to breathe. The chemistry between characters creates momentum that feels natural rather than forced. And then the same pattern repeats. High cost, shifting priorities. Network decides to move on. Canceled without ceremony. What remains is a concept that still feels relevant: power tied to control, freedom limited by dependency. A system where the person with ability is never truly in charge. That idea has only become more relevant over time. The Invisible Man was not just another sci-fi show. It was a concept that still has not been fully explored. Some stories do not fail, they are abandoned. These shows still echo because they were never allowed to finish what they started. If one of them deserves a second life, you already know which one. Tell me your pick. Because the right revival could change everything, and this time we might finally see it through.